golf nerds. Here's the moment you've been waiting for, another episode of Swing Thoughts. Oh, yay. Every week, I just imagine our, golf geeks that love this show are just like, oh, is it almost Swing Thoughts times yet? Is that time? Is it almost time for the big show? Well, it is. Here it is. I'm Humble Howard from the Humble and Fred Show, golf spiritual leader, along with Coach Tim O'Connor, o'connorgolf.ca. Look at you, looking at me, looking at you, dressed in these fineries.
Resplendent, I would say.
Yes.
Visions of sartorial splendor, as my father used to say.
That's right. Well, we'll tell you right now, we've been talking about Jonathon Wong Apparel the last couple of weeks, but we're finally wearing some. Let's go to Coach Tim. Tim, what are you featuring on this show?
Well, I am modeling the fairway and green vest. Lots of freedom, very nice solid color to go with a fairway and green patterned shirt. I'm colorblind, so I got the okay from my wife that they go together, so we're fine.
Well, here's the thing. I'm colorblind too, but my lady friend isn't here yet, so I just went with, well, it seems like it matches. When she first met me, she said, do you shop at All Things Brown? I went, I guess. I don't know. I'm wearing the, what am I wearing here? This is Zero Restriction. This is a really cool shell. Because it's got sort of a nylon, this part, whatever the main part is, but your arms are not restricted. I just want to mention that Jonathon Wong Apparel, each brand delivers great quality and styling for all weather conditions. They also offer great accessory lines that can be totally customized for your club, one that you would be proud to wear and proud to sell. Jonathon Wong will be with us in a couple weeks to get into more about, this amazing stuff. Can we call it stuff?
Yeah, it's golf. I mean, it's stuff.
It's golf stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to, of course, mention that our friends at TaylorMade Golf, like it's incredible. The game has changed, but TaylorMade Canada continues to evolve with the Sim 2 driver. You mentioned you've got yours. Mine is sitting over here, yet to be struck. Where's yours? Is yours in the background there?
Right behind me there. Yep. It arrived. It arrived the same day that Dictator Ford closed down golf in Ontario, the only jurisdiction in North America where golf is illegal.
The world. The only place on planet Earth right now where they play golf, wherever they play golf, this is the only place you can't play. I got mine. My Sim True driver came the day before the lockdown. You can experience the drives every golfer wants to hit and no golfer wants to follow with the all-new Sim 2 driver only from TaylorMade. Visit TaylorMadeGolf.ca to learn more, and maybe a little bit later on in the show, we'll tell you more about that. Our guest today, look at him. I wonder who sponsors his clothing, because he always looks, pretty well put together.
Oh yeah.
He is a mental performance coach extraordinaire, has been teaching people all over the world, not only golfers, but people who teach golfers. He coaches coaches. He's written several books. We've had him on to discuss these before. The Lost Art of Putting, I don't have it in front of me, Carl, The Lost Art of Playing Golf. I believe I've read it. Okay, so I have that down. Please welcome back to our program, Karl Morris. Hello, sir. How are you?
Thanks, Howard. Good to be Tim. Good to be back with you. I actually feel underdressed in the sense that the top that I've got, I actually bought it myself. So I feel as though I'm missing out with all this sponsored apparel.
Oh my God!
That's
Carl,
come on now.
You're in golf communications. I mean, it's against the code to go into your own pocket to buy anything golf-wise.
I was like, wait a second. I thought you taught and worked around golf. Not only are we wearing Jonathon stuff, but I've got a TaylorMade T-shirt. But listen, you look great. Where do we find you this morning? Give us some context. Tell our audience where Karl Morris is today.
Yeah, I'm at home in the office. The domain that I've spent best part of 4 months in during the lockdown, doing various Zoom conferences and calls and working with players and things like that. And that's in Manchester, in the sort of mid part of England and the northwest of England. And at one point, we were talking before about the course closures and things like that. I had a guy from the States ask me how things were in the UK. And I said, well, at the moment, if you're in Scotland, you can play golf on the golf courses, but you can't in Ireland. You can play golf in Wales, but you can't in England. I said, if you can work any of that out, you're a better man than me. So it was a crazy period.
And for people who haven't been there, all of those places are fairly close together. So did UK drivers, well, for your context, Karl, here in Ontario, the only place you can't play golf in Canada, if you live in Ottawa, you can drive across the border to Quebec and play golf this weekend. When you were in lockdown in the UK, were people going to those other places to play?
There were various English people attempting to cross the border into Scotland, but the esteemed first leader of the Scottish National Party, I think she'd rebuilt Hadrian's Wall to stop the English going back into Scotland. So it was actually illegal to go into Scotland. It was illegal to go into Wales. But as we were saying before, the crazy thing is, certainly where I live, that you could actually go out for some exercise every day, and one of the places that you could go to exercise and walk was the golf course. So I used to go and have a walk on my local golf course where my wife plays, and I would see hundreds of people walking around the golf course. So you could go on the golf course. You could go on the golf course, but not with any clubs or balls. So it was just an amazing thing.
Did people take umbrellas and kind of pretend it, as we often do with umbrellas?
Yeah, I think there was a few people out there swinging umbrellas, and in many ways it was probably a good opportunity to get out there and not hit any bad shots. I remember once hearing a story about a very eccentric gentleman who was up at, I think it was in the far north of Scotland. It may have been at Dornoch or Nairn or somewhere in the sort of wilds of Scotland, who went out every single day onto the golf course in a kilt, but without any golf clubs. He would just actually go and play a round of golf without actually hitting any shots. He would just walk around imagining that he was hitting shots and play 18 holes every day like that. So he was probably the happiest golfer on earth.
Yeah, well, exactly. I was going to say nothing because you're not over par, you're not under par, you're just walking around in the splendor. I played at a course here in Canada for a long time called the National, and it had a lot of, pretty well-to-do members. And one of the richest members, as he got very, very old, he would go out with his clubs, but within a hole or two, he didn't want to play anymore. He just liked to look for balls. And so this is true. Honestly, he could have bought the golf course with the change in his pocket, but they was backing up the golf course because he would stop playing and just look for balls on every hole because that's what made him happy. He just enjoyed finding golf balls. And
you know what?
Well, maybe that in the end is what the game's about. Find what you enjoy about it.
Exactly. I actually remember I was on a golf trip to Ireland, and I played the old course at Ballybunion earlier in the week, and then I went back with a photographer. No golf clubs, so we're just walking around the golf course, and I had such a greater appreciation for the course, and I realized it was because I wasn't attached to my game. It was, I wasn't walking down the golf course sulking about, hitting one into the ocean or something. But
it's funny that, Tim. I with a lot of players, certainly at the tour end of things, over the years, I think it's been very beneficial for a number of players. I mean, a suggestion, I heard that Jack Nicklaus used to do this. When you get to a venue, if you've got the time, is actually walk the golf course first, but actually walk it backwards.
Yeah.
And it's for anybody listening, especially if you're in Ontario and you can't actually play the game. I promise you, if you walk the golf course backwards, starting at the 18th, and literally walk the course backwards, you'll actually what I call shatter the illusion, because course designers employ a phenomenon, if I call it the railway line effect, whereby if you were stood on a, not that you would hopefully not be doing this, but if you were stood on a railway line, if you look down a railway line, the lines appear to meet. Now, obviously they never do, but there's a foreshortening effect as you look into the distance. And what course designers do, they employ that really well. So many holes give the impression of actually being tighter and narrower than they really are. But when you walk the course backwards, when you stand on the green and look out to the fairway, you shatter that illusion. You'll see that the width of a lot of the holes, you'll see the width of a lot of the fairways. You know, I'm not saying there's not difficult holes, there obviously is, but it's a really good exercise. And I remember you know, Graham McDowell years ago working with him, and he was playing at the Dunhill Links Trophy, and he got in late for whatever reason, and he could only walk the old course because he didn't have time, because it was the old course, Carnoustie and Kingsbarns. And I think it was the first time he'd ever walked the old course, and he walked it the night before he played, and then went out the next day and shot, I think he shot 63 or 64, something like that. And he said it was amazing how many of the shots that he'd actually kind of seen in his mind's eye the night before came to fruition. Now, you know, obviously it's not as simple as just walking the course and you're going to shoot 63s, but it's just interesting. It's just interesting how you can you know, look at different approaches and different ideas just to, you know, unlock some of the mysteries of the game.
You know, Karl, we've been talking the last couple of weeks on the show. Tim and I a few years ago went to a seminar with Scott Fawcett from Decade, and he's been in the news a lot lately because he's working with his kid, Will Zalatoris. One of the things he recommends, and I've tried it a bit, is you go on Google Earth, and you can go to your golf course on Google Earth, and there's just a drawing tool. And I did this during the lockdown because one of the things we were going to talk to you about is, you know, what you guys did to keep golf ready during those months. And I've been doing this, Tim and Karl, on my course, Glencairn. You know, of course, I've played hundreds of times, but on Google Earth, I could look at the holes and then map out how many yards there are in the landing areas. Because what you said, Karl, is so true. Some of the course, especially Glencairn, which is a links style course, it makes your eye think those bunkers are so narrow. But when you go on Google Earth, you realize there's 70 yards between this hazard and that hazard. And I thought to myself, you know, in a way, it'll help free me up because I know I've got this much room to play with. Your eye doesn't see it, but mentally, you know that there's a lot of room. And just Google Earth, especially, and Fawcett recommends it for sure for courses you've never played. So you can go and see what the track looked like when you're looking down on it, as opposed to standing there on, you know, at your normal your normal view. What else did you recommend to your players that they do during the lockdown?
Yeah, it was an interesting time, to say the least. And one of the suggestions, I did loads of Zoom conferences. Normally in January, February, and March, I travel around the UK and sometimes, well, generally UK and Europe, doing seminars to a live audience. Something that seems like it's a lifetime away at the moment. I can't imagine humans being in front of me anymore. But what we did in those Zoom calls, we did it to members of various clubs, and it was a great chance to connect with the members and share a few ideas. But one of the things that I explored was the idea of, and this is something that Tim will relate to, and I'm sure you, Howard, that Fred Shoemaker talked a lot about, was what we call the in-between of golf. You know, the 90% of time on the golf course that you're not actually playing, that huge amount of time that you're not swinging a golf club. And how can that 90% not have some impact on the 10%? And as a suggestion, what I did was, for the players listening in, was the idea that every day when you go out for a walk, pick something physical that you can focus on. So it might be your breath, or it might be the feeling of your feet on the floor, or maybe something in terms of your awareness of your surroundings. But just pick something. So for instance, if you pick the feeling of your feet on the floor and just walk and see how long you can keep your attention there. And what sounds unbelievably simple is actually really quite challenging, because the mind does what it tends to do, which is wander off into the past and project into the future. But the number of people who said that just doing that exercise, just for its own sake, just to go for a walk, place your attention on something physical that's going on right here and now, was a really, really beneficial thing. It kind of calms the mind down and quiets things down. But, I said, well, you could look at your daily walk then as a sacred ritual that potentially when you get back to playing golf can be beneficial. Because I think, once you get back playing again, there'll be those occasions where you've got a few holes to play and you might be in contention to win the monthly medal or get your handicap down or whatever. And then that's when the mind does what it does in between shots and plays all its tricks. So if you've worked on some of those things in the lockdown period, it's potentially really beneficial.
Yeah, that's awesome. But in essence, what you're talking about is people integrating elements of mindfulness into your daily routine or the things you do. And once you get your reps in doing that, you can take it to the golf course. I mean, that's a great recommendation. So I do a webinar called Lower Your Scores with Obedience Training for Your Brain. And one of the things I get asked all the time, so I'll do this webinar and people say, how do I stop myself from thinking? Well, that's what we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes. And I say, well, it's normal to think. People say they think that PGA Tour players are Zen masters who somehow bliss out and have no thoughts. No, that doesn't happen. I remember you telling the story about Graham McDowell leading the Scottish Open or something, worrying about topping the ball, between holes. They have, but the skill of awareness is being able to just kind of focus on, say, a body part or the sky or the trees and it doesn't stop the thinking because we always start thinking again, but we can come back. And I think that's the key thing, is that people can learn that they can better manage their thoughts, not control, but manage.
I think the idea, I've certainly, I suppose evolved my thinking about this over the years, that, in the early days, I suppose I would have been guilty of, if that's the right word, of giving some prescriptive advice to people to try and change thoughts or alter thoughts or whatever. And, unfortunately, I think what that kind of approach can just rev up thinking, that you end up thinking about your thinking. So, I'm far more now. We actually ran some mindfulness courses with a chap called Vin Harris. We did a number of courses during the lockdown period.
Yeah, we had him on our podcast one time.
Mm-hmm.
Did you? Okay, right,
yeah.
Great. And we did an online course, things like that. And Vin's line is a great one, and he said, really, it's not about trying to change your thinking. It's more about changing your relationship to your thinking. So
right.
that the idea that you will have the most random thought popping into your head, like Graham had, of topping it off the end of the tee, even though you're playing great golf, or whatever it may be. But I think there's an understanding that you can actually notice these thoughts a little bit more and allow them to be, and then get back to the task of this shot in this moment, and creating what you've got in front of you.
From meditation, we've talked about this on the show about, mindfulness in and of itself really is just the idea, I think, that you're mindful of your thoughts and not being controlled by them. Like, a dog seeing a squirrel, every thought that pops into your head. And, I think Tim and I talked about this on the last podcast. I'm pretty sure it's come up before, which is the idea that when you're meditating, really what you're learning to do is to notice when your mind wanders and bring yourself back to the present. That's really mindfulness, because now you've noticed that you're thinking, I might top this in front of everyone, and that's fine, but I'm here now, and what do I have to do in this next moment of my life? Karl, Tim had mentioned that we might want to talk to you about, how you came to be, and the fact that you were an aspiring player yourself. So maybe you could take a couple minutes, because I don't know, we've had you on many times, but for people that are just tuning in, we've got new listeners. Where did it be? Just take a couple seconds and tell us where it began for you. You were an aspiring player, and how you ended up being Karl Morris, mindfulness, lost art of putting, lost art of golf, etc.
Yeah, definitely. I think many people who teach the game wanted to play for a living and had great aspirations. And I was singularly spectacular on the range, but could never take it to the golf course. I spent a long time trying to work on a golf swing, thinking a golf swing could fix all the problems, and somebody would be able to give me a series of moves that could fix the swing. And 20 years or so went by with that kind of approach and not really yielding much. And I just became more and more interested in the combination, really, of how do we develop better skills in combination with understanding a little bit more at the mind, because I think we're still at the beginning point of even having any concept of the mind and how it works and the connection with the brain, things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's 20 odd years ago now that journey started, and I went to see Fred Shoemaker. He was a big influence on me. Read Galway's books, looked at NLP, hypnosis, you name it. It was in the library, and I kind of explored all kinds of different avenues. But I've always been a fairly practical person, and I just kind of threw myself in at working with players. And I'd one or two successes in the early days. One or two players came to me in a state of desperation, which is they're always quite responsive when they're in that state. And
isn't that the truth?
I'm shanking it. Please save me.
No, I'm just thinking of my kids. My kids really only listen to me when they need something from me,
like money.
No, I know. They need a favor. They need me to get the truck to move their furniture. Then they're paying attention. Please continue, Karl.
Yeah, and one of the players, a young player in this area, actually, where I live, Philip Archer, who'd consistently struggled to put 4-round scores together, even though he'd had some amazing scores in pro-ams. We started to do some work together, and he went to the tour school that year and shot 27 under par to secure his tour card. And all of a sudden, it was kind of up and running, really, the whole business, I suppose, as a result of that. One of the managers who was at the time, well, still is around, Chubby Chandler, who was looking after Graham McDowell and Darren Clark and Lee Westwood and Louis Oosthuizen. I got to know him really well, and I had the chance to work with some of his players. Got the chance to work with Darren early on, and again got quite lucky with that, because we had a couple of sessions, and then he went and won a WGC event, heading off Tiger Woods, not the match play event. It was the second one he won. It was the stroke play at Akron, and he holds a bunch of putts on the back nine to hold Tiger off when he was really in his pomp. And so it kind of exploded, not exploded, but it gradually developed from there. And here we are 20 odd years later, still battling away.
Well, as you said, you've worked with some amazing players, major champions, Darren Clark, Louis Oosthuizen. Could you tell us that story about the dot on the glove with Louis?
Yeah, Louis. He came to see me as a result of Andrew Chandler, Chubby Chandler, and we sat down in the office in Manchester, and Louis had just played in the US Open, and I asked him what was going on, and started chatting away, and he said, "I'm really struggling with being in the shot." He said, "I'm playing loads of shots out on the golf course where I kind of hit the ball, and afterwards I think I just wasn't there with that shot at all. I was just somewhere else." And I said, "Well, what are you doing in between shots?" He said, "Oh, I'm concentrating in between shots." And it was kind of like one of those classic moments. And I said, "Well, what would you want to be over the ball? What kind of state of mind would you like to?" And I think he said focused or absorbed or something like that. And I said to him, if that state of mind had a color, what would it be? And he looked at me as though it was the most ridiculous question that anybody's ever asked ever, as it probably seemed at the time. And I pushed him on it, and he said red, I guess. And I'll never forget, it was one of those serendipitous moments. We were at a desk, and there was a red marker pen on the desk. And whether that had triggered him to say red or not, I don't know. But he picked up the marker pen. So he said, "What if I put a red dot on the glove? Could I look at that dot before every shot as a kind of signal to get into this particular shot in this particular moment?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And we went away from that session. He played in the Scottish Open. I think he missed the cut in the Scottish Open, but played pretty well. or he said he felt better. And then he went to St Andrews. This was 2010, and he'd never made a cut in a major. And he played the first round, and the whole deal for the whole week was just do one thing, was just look at that dot on your glove, and that's a trigger to just ask a couple of questions to get into the shot, create the shot. And that was the goal for the week. And then in between shots, and his caddy was brilliant at this, it was a lad called Zach. The deal in between shots was just to chat away, look at your surroundings, be social, be light, be energetic. So dot, you're in for the shot, come out again, in and out for the whole of the round. And that was the deal every day. And he shot, I think he shot 65 or 64 the first round, was leading. Many of the pundits said there's no way he can hang on for 4 rounds. And then 4 rounds later, he's walking up the 18th hole at St Andrews with a 7-shot lead.
Wow.
Can you imagine anything better than that? Standing on the 18th at St Andrews, and you've got a 7-shot lead in the British Open, so you can just take advantage of that wide open fairway. And
no, I was going to say you could just kick it to the left if you wanted to.
could have hit the putter off the tee, and
absolutely, you could hit 7 putts easily.
Yeah, but it was interesting actually that the dot did get a little bit of press at the time, maybe a little bit too much, because he was already a good player. He'd already many ingredients. Yeah, he'd already many ingredients in place. So it was just, I suppose, a trick really in some respects, a focus point, a mantra, if you like, for that.
Well, what's interesting though about what you say is a lot of amateurs do the opposite. They're grinding away in their heads all the way to in between shots, and then they get over the ball and they've got so many things going that they're the opposite. It's the upside down of golf that we, Tim's talked about this with his clients. We've talked about it as tournament players. Like in between, you're trying to be as light and social and out of your own stupid head as possible. And yet most people, the higher handicap level, not only is it bad for their golf, but it's not much fun to be around. And in the end, you don't leave the golf course feeling lighter. Where I wanted to go with that, though, is as a guy that's worked with European Tour players and some high-level players over your career, do you have a thought, opinion, or a comment about the state of Rory McIlroy these days? I'm sure that's a hot topic in the UK. What's going on with him? One of the most talented players of any generation, and he just seems to be out of sorts when it comes to the more important tournaments.
Yeah, I'm always a bit reluctant to give too much of an opinion, Howard, on somebody that I know. I mean, we used to when Graham McDowell played practice rounds very often.
You're safe here, Karl. You're safe to give your opinion.
Honestly,
nobody's listening.
Like my other radio show, I call this the witness protection program of podcasts. No, very few people are going to don't even worry about changing your name. You're just fine here. Say what you want.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I know him, and he would kind of like know to say hello to me, kind of thing. But I look at Rory and think there's an immensely gifted, one of the most gifted players in the world. When Rory's game is firing full cylinders, he's very hard to beat. But I think we don't often, or we don't enough look at the whole picture with a player. That in a career that he's already been around for a number of years, and he's married now. He's got kids. Life off the golf course is probably very different than it's ever been before. He may be, immensely content doing that. I'm not saying this is the reason, but I just look at it that there's, many facets to make up a golfer. And I think we want to jump straight in at, oh, he's doing this with his hips, or he's doing that with his elbow, or whatever it may be. When if you look at a career over 20 years or so, or 25 years, there's natural peaks and troughs with every player.
And maybe not fair to look at one slice of a giant, golf pie. Timmy, what were you going to ask?
Well, I was wondering, as soon as I heard that Roy was starting to work with Pete Cowan, and my understanding that Pete Cowan is a very technical coach, and I went, oh my gosh, really? A player like Rory immersing himself in technique. This sounded like when Seve started to work with David Ledbetter.
No,
I thought,
Mac O'Grady. Remember that weird moment?
oh gosh, yeah.
Do you remember before he went to Ledbetter, Seve went to Mac O'Grady? I thought, great, Seve's going to start swinging left-handed.
Well,
Exactly.
the best story about that is, and I don't know whether it's true or not, but it needs to be because it's such a great story. Because if you can
Doesn't matter.
if you can picture this, apparently what happened was that Mac, in his own inimitable way, said to Seve that if he was going to work with him, it had to be exclusively him, nobody else, and whatever had happened in the past needed to be buried because he was going to coach him how to swing the golf club properly. And apparently what they had to do, Seve had to get some pictures and some videos of his golf swing, and they went and did this ceremonial burying in the desert.
It completely.
Where they went out, and you can just imagine Seve with that sort of look that he used to have of what's going on here, and he's Seve with some pictures, some videos, and a spade in the desert,
Burying his golf course,
bury his golf swing, so it could be resurrected.
Yeah, and, it's funny, but golf is
Tragic.
littered with stories like that. Players who win a major and think, well, I got to take my game to another level. So they start working on the game a bit more. I don't know. Ian Baker Finch, I think, was a good example of that. You had players like, what happened to David Duval? I think that part of his thing was, I won the Open, and it was kind of like Peggy Lee. Is that all there is to a fire?
Yeah.
Duval's a complicated dude, but there's lots of players where they win, and so they don't want to become known as the one-hit wonder. So they go to change their game, because I think that still part of what we're operating within is this golf culture, this paradigm of it always comes down to mechanics. Players, they have a bad round. What do? They run to the range afterwards to work on what's my elbow doing and am I supinating, et cetera, et cetera. So Karl, what I want to, and a thing that I've followed on your podcast, The Brain Booster, is you've had a number of guests recently who have really talked about, it's really about hitting golf shots. It's about adapting. It's not about the swing and the technique. But I still feel like kind of that is still kind of out in the wilderness a little bit in compared to this massive golf culture of Instagram and YouTube and all that. But I don't know. That was a lot there. I'll let you go.
Yeah, no, it's it is, and at the minute I don't necessarily see things getting better. I see things getting worse with this. That we kind of know instinctively that when, as a golfer, you become absorbed in telling your body how to move by self-instructing, positions within the swing. For the vast majority of people, that's an absolute recipe for disaster. Not everybody, but for the vast majority of people. But there's many layers and levels to this. It's very intellectually appealing for a coach to believe that they've got the secret, that they've got the secret sauce that they can bequeath to somebody. I think that's a powerful driver. But I think, when you go down that route, when you go down that rabbit hole, it can be a dangerous place. And you've named a couple of players. I could probably reel off 30 players that went down that rabbit hole and disappeared and lost their careers. And unfortunately, I think what happens is the 30 that disappear, we don't hear too much about, but the one or two that, maybe make that work, we hear it, he's been transformed by doing this, that, or another in his golf swing. But fundamentally, in the Lost Art books, we said, I think we need to change the fundamental question. Now, the fundamental question is either you ask yourself, what's wrong with my swing? Or you ask yourself, what's wrong with my shots? Now, if you ask yourself, what's wrong with my swing, you will get a whole bunch of opinions based on the visual aspect of your golf swing, how your golf swing looks from an outside perspective. Mm-hmm. If you ask the question, if you ask the question, what's wrong with my shots? Then I think there's a far more objective way of going about dealing with that, because it's got too much shape from right to left, too high, too low, whatever it may be. And I think that's where there can be a great synergy then between a coach and a player in working on shots. There's a book written years ago Stephen Covey wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and one of the 7 habits was begin with the end in mind.
It's my favorite of the 7.
Yeah, begin with the end in mind. Now, if you think about it, begin with the end in mind. If you're going down the swing route, when do you get done? When do you get finished with it? When is it ready? It's never ready. But if you begin with the end of, I want to hit a draw, a fade, or high, a low, punch shots, whatever it may be, you can really tune in and develop those skills. So I think, is it because technology is so readily available? Is it because many people make their living from coaching the game with the very best of intentions? Because I'm not questioning anybody's intention here. Everybody's got good intentions. But, the science would tell us, Gabrielle Wolf's work would tell us that, an internal focus of attention directing your body to move in certain ways is just not how we learn things efficiently. But it's... I don't see the walls coming down quite yet. We're battling away with podcasts like this, but it's not changing rapidly.
I mean, there's so much there, as the kids say, to unpack. I mean, there's the two most famous players that ever sort of rebuilt their swing and went on to greatness. It's hard to argue with Nick Faldo and Tiger Woods. But as you say, the golf world is littered with, people that were on the edge of greatness or even achieved greatness. And then I'll tell you a quick thing that I thought of while you were talking about those players, Tim and Karl. I was watching a little bit of the PGA tournament this week. I think it's the Valspar. And I can't remember the tour player, but he sank a putt, like a 7 or 8 foot putt. And it went in for birdie, but he still made a face. And the announcers go, that's the PGA Tour player in a nutshell. He made the putt, but he didn't like the part of the hole that the ball went in. I thought, that's the difference between us and them is we would just be happy it went in, but he made a face like he'd missed it because it just wiggled in on the right-hand side. The other thing about, swing technique versus golf, in the kingdom is that it's intoxicating. This morning, getting ready for the show, I'm looking at my phone and I go onto the Instagram, and then I got 4 golf tips in 30 seconds. Golfers are in this weird space where there's so much information. When we were all kids, the 3 of us, I didn't see my golf swing on video until I was in my 30s. But imagine a 16 or a 15, 14-year-old kid now. They can, not only can they watch all the videos in the world, but they can watch their own video. They can put their video up on a technology and see the lines. And so it's intoxicating. But as you say, it's not out there. It's all internal. We're going to have to wrap you up here in a second, Karl, because we've got the rest of the program. We've got a couple things to discuss. I have a couple quick questions, because I mentioned Scott Fawcett and Decade. And one of the things in The Lost Art of Putting, which I've read and enjoyed, the great question, ask yourself, what does the ball have to do to go in the hole? What do I need to do to get this ball to go in? One of the things Fawcett said, and I want to get your reaction, was he said, stop trying to make birdies, stop trying to make putts. And his point is, statistically, even on the PGA Tour, their 8-foot putt make ratio is 50%. So the rest of us trying to make 10 and 12 and 15 footers are trying to ram them in, and we're leaving ourselves putts coming back that are tougher to make, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think about that as a philosophy, as opposed to stop trying to make the putt and maybe make a good putting motion or whatever it is?
I think it's a great philosophy. It sounds kind of music to my ears, that really. I remember Paul Drake Harrington saying years ago, he always said that you can't go out to make birdies, you've just got to create the conditions to allow them to happen. And that's a perfect example. The more you're trying to make the putt, the more you're trying to make the birdie. Even on the European Tour and PGA Tour, you can always see it, certainly come Saturday and Sunday, when these players are playing par 5s where they're supposed to make birdies. How many of them don't? Because they're just so absorbed in the outcome of the hole rather than the creation of the individual shots and then creating the conditions to allow that. So yeah, it's a tough skill. It's a tough skill to master. But I think Scott Fawcett's absolutely right there. The more that you can create the mindset that allows birdies and allows putts to fall in, as opposed to trying to make them.
Well, his point, Karl, and I really believe this because I've seen it in my own game the last couple of years, is a lot of amateurs think we got to make a lot of birdies to lower your scores. And he shows you statistically, the difference between a 95 shooter and a 79 shooter is one more birdie. But the biggest difference is less 3-putts, less 2 chips, less penalty shots. But in the 3-putt category, that an 85 shooter, I just read this the other day, has something like 3.5, almost 4 3-putts around, because the idea, they expect that they're supposed to be making 12 and 15 and 20 footers. And one of the great things about his statistics is he shows you at 30 feet on the PGA Tour, at just past 30 feet, they start to be more likely to 3-putt it than to make it. So if you know those things and you go out and play your regular golf game, his idea, and it kind of goes a little bit with the lost art of putting, is, your intention is you'd like to sink it, but really you're just trying to get it around the hole. As he says, you might leave a few putts short, but that 1-incher is a lot easier to make than the 5-footer coming back because you rammed it in thinking, I got to make this birdie. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, what we do major on in the book, in the lost art of putting, is the idea that you only need 2 things to hold a putt. One of them is pace, one of them is line. We ask in seminars which is the most important, and virtually everybody will say pace. But then you say, well, what are you working on? And pretty much everything that we do in putting, everything that we do in putting is about line. All the gadgets are about line, all the swing aid, all the putting aids are about line. Very few things are about pace, but actually, if you just went out with the intention of getting better at pace, it's amazing. You would 3-putt a whole bunch less, and actually, most golfers 3-putt not because they're bad at line, they 3-putt because they're bad at pace, or they're poor at pace. Most are better at pace. Most are better at line than they think, and worse at pace. So. That
just before Tim steps in, I got to tell you the truth. This happened a couple of weeks ago. I thought of you. I'm not just saying this because you're here. I thought of you because during the broadcast, one of the players who had a line on his ball, he had about a 30-footer and didn't use the line. And I thought, that's Karl Morris right there. Because at 30 feet, the line, this guy is a tour player. He knew the line was immaterial. It didn't matter where the line was going because he was just trying to make sure the pace was right.
Well, that's my sense of it. Go ahead, Karl.
I was going to say, if the line works for you and you're a good putter using a line, I would be the last person to say. But for a lot of players, taking the line away is very liberating. You get far less involved in perfection and much more absorbed in feel and pace and more sort of artistic notions rather than scientific perfection.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I picked up from your Lost Art of Putting book was that reading the putt on the low side about halfway down, because a lot of people are really flummoxed on how to read a green. And I think that was one of the most best parts of that book I got from that was low side about halfway down.
Well, if you haven't figured out, Tim and I are, we admire this man, Karl Morris. He is right there. He's about to leave. Lost Art of Putting. If you're looking for a really good, if you're in the lockdown, you want to improve your putting at home, read this now. Lost Art of Golf, Mind Power, Brain Booster, the podcast. Karl's a solid single-digit podcaster now. He's getting there. He's on his way to scratch. Thank you so much, Karl. We really appreciate you popping in, helping us get this season underway.
My pleasure. I guess when I started to hear the music, I knew my time was up for this time.
That was kind of a subtle nod to we're wrapping you up.
Yeah. But no, it's been a lot of fun. I always enjoyed speaking to both of you. Great
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Karl. Well, take care. Bye-bye.
We feel privileged being able to call on you. There you go. Karl Morris, everybody. All right, let's talk a little bit about the fine people here, Timothy. At here we go. I got so many. There we go. You mentioned the Sim 2 driver. You know what? The Sim 2 irons are perfect for our swing thought, golf geeks, because their unique cap back design will give you more forgiveness. We're all looking for that. More distance, more often. Experience the all-new Sim 2 irons from TaylorMade. Visit TaylorMadeGolf.ca to learn more. I've seen them. They're pretty they're pretty good looking. You know, they're the kind of they look like you can just hit them far, and I think that's what we're all that's what we're all looking for.
Well, the thing is that they're when you put them down, they're really sweet looking. It used to be that the so-called game improvement clubs looked a bit clunky. These look so sweet.
That's a great point. The old game improvement irons were like almost like you didn't want to be seen using them because people were like, ooh, it's like training wheels on your bike as a kid,
or having a ball retriever.
Yes. No, I remember that. I had that conversation with my ex-wife years ago. She wanted to buy me some golf stuff. You know what she bought me? She bought me the potty putter for Christmas one year.
Yes. Oh, I know that. Oh God, was that cheesy? My dad actually had a great line. My dad said, I've been playing so bad, I had to get my ball retriever regripped. But
that's great. But I remember she gave me that, and I looked at it, and you're basically, for you people who don't know it, it's like a putting green you use while you're on the toilet. And I said to her, I can't really. And then when I met this lovely woman I'm with now, Rachel, the first present she bought me was a head cover. I don't even remember. It's a squirrel or a chipmunk, or it's like a cartoon character, giant animal head cover. And I just said to her, I really appreciate you doing that, but I can't show up to my golf course with that. I can't. I said, we'll just be better if you don't try and buy me any golf stuff. That would be fun.
I know. The best, whatever people try to buy. What did we get Dad for his birthday or for Father's Day? Well, he likes golf. It's like, no, don't you could buy a book, buy a golf book. Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're looking for Father's Day or Mother's Day gift coming up, we recommend jwapparelinc.com, Jonathon Wong. We mentioned some of these brands, Fairway and Green. You know, Tim and I got our shipment of clothes to this week, and I don't know what you did. I was like Christmas. I put all my shirts out. I put them all on the table. I took a picture. The brand names are Fairway and Green, Zero Restriction, which is what I'm wearing, B Dratty, EPNY, Garb, Royal Albatross, and PRG Golf. These aren't, I tried on a couple of the shirts, man. These are not your normal. I've never had golf apparel like this. Like it's a bit intimidating.
Were you a bit nervous for the first 5 minutes you had it on?
Yeah, because I legendarily spill shit every time I have food near me. Apparently, I just spill it on myself.
I know, it's like me and ice cream cones and golf shirts. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well,
but no, this stuff it just feels different, but you just know that it's quality and that this is stuff that's going to last more than one golf season. I find that with other stuff, after about a year, But this stuff, I can't see this stuff doing it at all.
Especially after bad rounds. Like I've got a couple of old golf shirts that just have this kind of death stink on them. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I was shot 82 that day. Oh yeah, that smells like an 82. Oh yeah. When I was first starting out, this is a true story. When I first started out and doing stand-up, because they talk about, I don't know if you ever heard this phrase, flop sweat.
Yes, that was Albert Brooks.
Yeah, Albert Brooks in broadcast news.
Yep.
That's him having an attack of flop sweat. But the reason they call not doing well bombing or dying is because what happens to your body, it exudes sweat, but in a different kind of, I don't know, from a different pituitary gland, but I can tell you I had a sports jacket, that's what we used to wear back in the 80s. And I bombed so hard one night, I couldn't wear it again because the stink that came off me was so foul.
What is the biology? What role does that play in our evolution as a species? This guy, as a caveman, this guy tried to get up in front of the cave and say a few funny lines, but he bombed. Yeah. So is that a way that they kind of get, put out into isolation or something?
I think more it's like the kind of fear sweat. I guess maybe it's to throw the tiger off your tail. The tiger's about to eat you. It's like, I can't eat that. It's foul. Something's wrong with it.
Exactly. It's sick.
But you're right about those golf shirts. They definitely, after a season or so, if when we've been lucky, we've been given some nice golf stuff. But this stuff has a different feel to it. Yes, it's a bit more expensive, but as you say, it's going to last you more than one season. In a couple of weeks, we're going to get Jonathon on, and he can explain. Jonathon's a good player, by the way. Did you know that?
I
Jonathon
knew he
Wong?
was avid. I didn't know
yeah.
that qualitative good player.
Yeah, very well. Yeah, decent, like low single digit.
Cool.
So that was great. Karl Morris, that idea of putting, by the way, that's one of my favorite books of his, is The Lost Art of Putting. And when I was having some trouble with my putting a couple of years ago, I engaged Karl's services for a couple of sessions. I know you work with him for different aspects of your coaching business. The more I get into this decade thing, and now I've tried to book not Scott Fawcett, but he has a partner, a guy named Lou Stagner, and I've tried to confirm him for a week from today to talk about statistics and how the average amateur can benefit. But man, I'll tell you, the more I've gotten back into decade, the more I think it's valuable for everybody, only from the standpoint of when I watch golf now, and if you get into it a little bit, you'll see I'm just noticing how many bad shots these guys hit. It's given me such a renewed sense of, how crappy we all are. 122 last night. Dustin Johnson. He was playing with that Newman.
Neumann, I think it is.
Neumann, the 22-year-old, unbelievable golf. Got the super. They was playing with him and Justin Thomas. All three golfers from the fairway. 120-ish shot. One of them hit the green because it was a little bit of a, doesn't matter, but that's the three best, one and two in the world, and those guys missed the green from 125 yards. So it kind of reminds us that there's a dispersion to everyone's shots, and that if you understand your dispersion, then your expectations can be a little bit more tempered. Like, I honestly can't wait to get back and play again. Number one, for strategic reasons, and also two, to realize, wow, I hit a lot of shots in a round that are pretty good that I think suck.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's the biggest thing about knowing statistics, is that you get to realize, like, some of your shots that you might think aren't any good aren't bad.
No, exactly. What I like about decade, and it connects to what Karl was talking about, is it connects you with what's real.
Yes.
Like walking the golf course backwards connects you with what's real. So I'm sure a lot of our listeners are thinking, you know what, I don't want to get lost in statistics. A lot of people go like, they still don't understand strokes gained. That took me about 3 years to get. But what I mean by connect to what's real is, so if you walk the golf course backwards, you actually see what the golf course actually is. And using technology, like the Google Maps thing, you see exactly what's there, as opposed to what you perceive to be.
Yes.
And not only with your eyes, but just, things that you tend to do. So if you have some stats, you have some data that's real. If you use technology, you know it's real. And just one thing, I'll just finish off here. What golf course designers do, Karl talked about that railway effect. Yes. They also place hazards, trees, things in a way to create illusions, so that a bunker looks like it's right in front of a green when in fact it is not. And even if you've played your home course for years, you still get sometimes sucked in to 100%. Those things.
And this, by the way, decade isn't all about these numbers. There's only a part of it. What the numbers do, and what it's done for me as a reminder, is just to realize, if you're 178, even at the professional level, from 180 yards on any golf course that the PGA Tour plays, there is a stroke, a number that they make from that point to the hole. So if you're in the middle, if you're 180 yards from the green and you're on the PGA Tour, depending on the severity of the greens, their stroke average is 3 point something. Like they're not that they're not as good as we think they are. We're not as bad as we think we are.
That's awesome point. Awesome point.
There's this Golf Galaxy commercial I keep referencing. And I told you the other day when we were talking about it, I love their tagline. It's something like, for all of us who believe there's a better golfer inside. I think that that's why we're here. We all kind of believe that there's a better player inside. And most of us have gone down if I could just make my swing bulletproof. When, as Karl says, reality is it's not about a better swing for anti-fragility. It's about a better game, a better idea, a better shot. And the thing that Decade, I just did this on Glencairn. I'll give you an example. The first hole at Glencairn has 3 bunkers. Now, I've lasered them. Depending on what tees I'm playing, I'll say, okay, that one bunker there is like 210, one's 220, one's 245. The 245 one, I can't, I don't often try and go over unless it's downwind. But then I looked on Google Maps, and there's so much room to the right of that first bunker. And what I did is I just drew a line in the middle of this. There's 65 yards between the one part and the other part. And then I just drew a line in the middle. And I said, okay, where does that aim me off the tee? And it aims me so much further right than I normally aim. And what it's going to do is I'll never try and go over those bunkers again. There's no point.
Yeah.
Because my shot pattern, further to the right, the odd one that I, pull, I'll fly the bunker. But the other ones will be safe. And especially if you're starting your round on that hole, you just don't want to be in the bunker, plain and simple.
Again, it's connecting to what's real. And so, boy, if there's something that, golfers in Ontario, if you're looking to do, go on Google Maps and your golf course, and you'll just learn a ton from that.
And what you said there, I think, is brilliant. It's connecting to what is real as opposed to what the architect or what you... Especially after you've played, like our courses, we've played them so many times. You sort of just take for granted that you know where everything is. And I looked around all 27 holes and I was like, wow, man, I had no idea there's so much room over here.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, this came out a couple weeks ago. There was a story, most people are familiar with it by now, about the PGA Tour announced this scheme to award $40 million as an incentive for their stars. And I don't have it in front of me, but there was 6 criterium that would be taken into consideration: social media, impact, ratings, etc. And there was a pool of $40 million that we're going to give to... Oh, there we go. Oh, by the way, I'm fixing this sign today, just so you know.
every show.
Yeah.
I think it's every show at about the 1 hour 25 mark. It falls down. I love it.
Yeah, because Fred's coming over here today with our new signs. That's why I didn't put this up permanently. Anyway, what do you think? What are your thoughts when you heard? And again, I'm sort of half explaining this, but I think most people listening to us have heard the story that the PGA Tour made this announcement. There was quite a bit of a stink about it, but what are your thoughts?
I don't like it at all. To me, it just sounds like a popularity contest. I just don't. I don't like it at all. I just think that there's enough to reward people out there, but it's kind of like, if someone's having a tough year, well, let's throw something Ricky Fowler's way, because let's make Ricky feel a little bit better. And he's doing so much for golf in terms of visibility and things like that. So I'm not a big fan of it. I remember sending you I'm actually trying to find the email that I sent to you about why I didn't like it.
Yeah. It's called the PGA Tour's new bonus program. It's the Player Impact Program.
Yeah,
or the PIP. The tour will pay out $40 million to 10 players deemed to do the most to boost publicity and engagement for the tour, and so on. I have a different opinion, but no, I was gonna say, you say you don't like it. It's a popularity contest, etc. But is that the reason? Just because? I'm trying to find the criteria here. These players will be chosen through an impact score, a number fueled by several factors, including popularity and Google search. Q rating. Do most people know what a Q rating is?
No, I don't.
A Q rating is a rating given to celebrities, TV stars. I first heard about it back in the early 90s when, you would say a Jerry Seinfeld has a Q rating of, meaning his impact on commercial, popularity, etc.
Sounds like a Black Mirror episode.
Nielsen brand rating, a metric that judges how a player delivers to sponsors based on their exposure, etc., etc. I will tell you why I think they did it, and I'll tell you why I like it. I think they did it because the era of Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson are sadly, we're in the sunset of that era. As much as it's hard for guys our age because we've also lived through a bit of the Nicholas Trevino, then into the Faldo and Norman couples, and now we're into the Tiger era and Phil. And oftentimes in sports, we're loath to let that go because to us that was, those are great times. The problem with the PGA Tour is it's so tied to Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson that they need to they need to create other stars. So this impact score, it is going to help fuel people like Dustin Johnson and Bryson DeChambeau, et cetera, to make sure that they're thinking, it's not just about their golf. They've got to be ambassadors for the game. The thing is, yeah, it's a lot of money, but if those guys do well, what it does, it brings more attention to the tour. This is the second part, why I like it. So Tiger and Phil are leaving, so now you've got this hole to fill. And I think the players that make an impact in this program will make an impact for the whole sport, not just themselves.
No, I still don't like it. And I was never a Phil fan anyways.
No, neither was I. Neither was I, but that's not part of this.
No, right. So to me, this is not dissimilar to what we just saw happen with soccer, with that whole Super League thing and the reaction against it. This, to me, is somewhat a reaction to this thing was called the PGL League.
That it was. They were going to.
Some guys were trying to float.
Tour, yeah.
It's like this Super League level for golf. Right. And my sense of this is kind of a knee-jerk thing by the tour, but the criteria just seems so nebulous to me. It's like a bunch of different factors, and you weigh them up, and if someone waves to the crowd more nicely, I just don't.
No, I think you're. Which is not like you. I think you're being very narrow in your assessment.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just having this instinctual reaction to it. I don't know. Is this like the Lady Bang in the NHL? I don't know.
No. By the way, I'm getting a little bit of. Is one of your speakers on? Because I'm getting a little bit of you and I coming through from something there. You might just be a little bit of audio coming through.
I'll turn my. I just turned my speaker down a bit.
It's okay. Hey, listen. It is. I think it's more than just about waving to the crowd. I mean, again, you think it's nebulous. I'm looking at their criteria. I just think in general. The PGA Tour is at a crossroads as Tiger is fading into the and Phil, I've hated him as long as I've known him, except now I like him a little better than I think I hate him a little less now because he's moving on. But they're in a bit of a pickle, if I might say that. They're in a bit of a spot because, their superstar of all superstars is going into the sunset. And I think these kind of things are meant to make sure that their current crop of superstars get that it's not just about how they're going to have to caretake the game a little bit. And maybe this is, and you're right, maybe this is a reaction to that Super League of golf. But I think I'm not as offended by it,
No, I just think, okay, not offended. It just seems
I think
weird
you are.
To
you're
me.
deeply offended.
I'm scowling and
you
grunting.
are. Oh, you're rich people. Rich
No,
people.
look.
That's you. I don't
Well,
understand.
okay.
Rich.
Well, look at Arnold Palmer, son of a superintendent.
Look at his impact on the game.
Yeah, I know. He wasn't incentivized by anything but being Arnie.
No, he was incentivized by sponsors and the responsibility. He did all these things.
Who came on board once they'd kind of understood what was at work. I don't think that changed Arnie an iota. I think he was still just Arnie. And I think that's the same way that Lee Trevino was just Lee. I mean, super entertaining. Tiger... Tiger was super popular, but he wasn't trying to be popular. In fact, I thought most of the time when Tiger's prime, he was trying to be less popular.
Yeah, again, I don't want to make this a debate. Except Tiger Woods was on every cover of the video game. Believe me, Tiger Woods was in the business of promoting Tiger Woods. But anyhow, let's agree to disagree. One last thing. There was a guy that I watched on television just briefly last night. and I thought this is an interesting evolution of the game. And he is like a name no one has heard of him. His name is Jordan Hahn, and he has the new record of being the tallest PGA Tour player to ever tee it up in a professional event. And he is
taller than Phil Blackmar?
He's an inch taller than Phil Blackmar. He's 6'8".
Whoa.
And I don't know what kind of career he's going to have, but I just saw it as, isn't it interesting that these guys have gotten taller, stronger, bigger. You know, you talk about Arnie and Jack. Jack's 5'11", Couples 5'11", Arnie 5'11". Now Dustin. The Tiger's 6'2", Dustin 6'3", this guy 6'8". And watching him on TV, I'm like, this is a guy who 20 years ago would never have even picked up a golf club. 30 years ago, golf wouldn't have even been a thing for him. Well, that was interesting to see that. We're going to see these human beings evolve to be, 6'4", 6'5", standard,
Well, great. I'm 5'7.5".
You and I are so past it, man.
Yeah, I know. But
so past it.
Well, I mean, it's an evolution. Well, look at the size of goaltenders now in the NHL. They won't look at you if you're any less than 6'4".
Yeah.
Because when you're on your knees, your shoulders are still at the crossbar.
Yeah.
But it's an evolution. You're seeing, I mean, you see guys like, you didn't used to see guys like Brooks Koepka on the tour.
No.
I mean, the guys
Dustin
like chiseled.
Johnson. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's more, it's embracing more of the athletes. And you're seeing it now that there used to be this huge gulf between long driving and actual PGA Tour. That's coming narrower and narrower. We see with Bryson and these guys.
Well, now they talk about guys who, are sort of medium hitters hitting it. They all hit it 300. Corey Pavin was a very, very short hitter on the PGA Tour, averaging, I think it was like 245, 250. But that was a time when the average player on the tour was hitting it, 272, 275. There are no, when they talk about short hitters now, guys like Ches Reavie and things like that, they're not short. They're not short to us, but they're, 285, 290. Mike Weir would have been sort of a career 275 hitter. And now, like all of these guys are, when they want, they seem to fly it in the air 300 yards.
Well, Brian Harmon, who looks on TV like he's 5'5". I don't know how tall he actually is. He hits the 300. I mean, the technology and the athleticism, they've taken all of that and they all go after. I was watching this Jason Day video about his process. He has he's very methodical, has this process. And I love he went all through this stuff and why he closes his eyes, visualization, all this stuff. And I get over the ball and then I hit it as hard as I can.
That's right.
I love that. Yeah. What's the key? I hit it as hard as I can.
Fred of the Humble and Fred show, just his grandson Johnny started playing golf recently, and I gave him some. I have these like indoor golf balls. They're rubber, but they've got enough heft to them that you can sort of feel like you're hitting a ball. And Johnny's out there hitting golf balls, and that's all I said to Fred. I said, don't tell him anything except go ahead and swing as hard as you can for his life. I said, worry about grip and all that. And sure enough, because this kid's father, Fred's son-in-law, he's got a nice golf swing. So Johnny is imitating his dad, but Fred sent me some videos, and this kid is just wailing on it.
That's great.
Which is great. Teach him the grip later. Worry about stance later. Just let him whack away.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, golf parents out there, don't infect your kids with the technical stuff. Yeah. Let them hit it as hard as they can. They'll go find it later, and they will.
It's funny. A couple years ago, I have those swing speed trainers.
Swing sticks.
Yes, I have those, and I use them for a summer.
I thought you were having a stroke just there.
No, I just I don't know. got so much junk. Anyway, but one thing about I lent them to my buddy Al. He gave them back to me. I use them sometimes warming up just because there's a weighted one. But one of the things that in the swing stick, world that I do agree with is, not that I don't agree with them, by the way. I think they're great. But if you're a guy our age and you think you're going to get 10 miles an hour of club head speed, you're not. You're just not. Maybe a couple of miles an hour, but as I said to my buddy who I lent them to, is all this work for 2 miles an hour of club head speed really going to lower your handicap? Because it ain't. 4 more yards of hit ain't going to make a difference if you were a better putter, chipper, etc. Anyway, one of the things they say, though, is you need to get used to swinging it faster. And, we all could swing it a little faster than our normal rhythm, but again, to what end? If you're not going to get, 5 miles an hour or 6 miles an hour faster, I don't know to me anyway, It doesn't seem like it's
But I love the idea of swinging it faster. The confusing part for a lot of amateur golfers is that they're going to use their big muscles and they're going to just try and swing as hard as they can and grunt it out there. That's not swinging faster. That, in fact, you'll swing slower doing that.
Yes.
And more of it's relying on your small muscles, and we could get into technical stuff.
The word
here.
you used a while ago, I love that word, abandon. Swinging with abandon is
well,
swinging faster.
It's interesting. We've come back to this a few times in podcasts, and I think we need to get Ryan Robillard on this esteemed podcast. I think he's the key guy in terms of distributing those sticks in Canada.
Yeah, let's get him on.
He's an assistant coach of the University of Windsor golf team. And I know Ryan. I'll reach out. We got to get him on because I like that idea of swinging with more freedom. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people are prone to trying to swing carefully, or I have to swing in rhythm, and in fact, I think you're just getting in your own way. I think when you swing with more speed and abandon, then you can really hit some good golf shots.
It's what you said about Jason Day. It's okay, I'm over the ball now, and again, back to decade. One of the things that he recommends, and I'm going to do it as soon as we can get back outside, because I did it when we took the seminar a couple years ago, but I haven't done it since, which is go to your range, hopefully on a day it's not so busy, and take 20 drivers and see what your dispersion is. And most of us, even tour players, their dispersion is immense. But let's just say guys like us or handicap players, my dispersion, let's say it's 60 yards. My good one is, so you're somewhere over here on the left, somewhere over there on the right. So knowing that it could go and you don't know which one's going to come, you might as well just rip at it. Because as you say, being careful and trying to swing harder actually slows your muscles down.
Exactly.
But knowing that within us on a tee box, there's the one down the middle, there's the hot pull left, there's the block right. It could be any one of those. So your best chance of club head control, not to want to get too technical, is to swing with abandon versus being careful.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's obviously, it's more instinctual. You think back to baseball. You got one that's over the middle of the plate. You're ripping at it, but you're not thinking, oh, I need to keep my head back and do this and that. No, right. You're going at it. So really, it's like our friend Todd Graves has said. Golf really, is it any more complicated than hitting a stick hitting a rock on the ground? No, really. And that comes back to full circle to what we're talking about with Karl. Is just this fixation on how to do it right, and this guy is saying this on YouTube, but I need to do that. Why don't you just do your swing?
Yeah. Well, that guy that I was talking about, the guy that writes the Practical Golf column, he's a kid out of New York. I did a little research this week.
Oh, cool.
And
what's his name?
I don't have it in front of me. I don't.
Okay, sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. Josh.
I think it is Josh.
Is it? Yeah, maybe Josh.
No.
But one of the things he talked about, and he's a plus 0.4, so he's just past scratch. And he said, my golf swing is my own. It's not, maybe what everyone would teach. He said, but I have spent most of my time learning my own golf swing. So he made an interesting point. If you're comfortable with how you swing a golf club, that's more important than if you're doing it technically perfect, because when pressure happens, you're always going to default to sort of how you normally swing it. And he said, I've learned to get around the golf course with my swing. And I thought that's a really interesting thing, that if you're a 12 handicap, you don't need to swing it like you think a scratch does. You just need to be good at swinging it like you swing it.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. I remember playing with a guy who hit a fade, and he said to me, "Damn, I can't hit a draw." And I said, "Why would you want to?
Why are you trying to?
You could play a fade all day and find the fairway, and even if you have a bit of a slice, allow for the slice. It's going to go, and that's about, again, it's about hitting shots and things as opposed to trying to do this thing right." Oh.
Yeah, Karl has this thing, and we didn't really get into it at the end, but asking good questions. What's, so not only is it in the Lost Art of Putting, but in another one of his books, he talks about what's the good shot here, or what's a good shot
here?
Like? Yeah. And I was going to say, two of the best players I played with at the National, between them have won 15 club championships, and one of them, Bill Hutchison, and Dan Partland, both highly ranked amateur players, both hit what I used to think of as just this dinky, cut. Just a little, and Bill Hutchison never missed fairways. He just hit a dinky cut, didn't hit it as far as some of his peers, just a 265, 270 yard, left to right shot all the time. And it wasn't until the Decade seminar that I realized he was doing it right. He just knew, and he didn't have the best golf swing, a very good swing, but not like, some of his peer group, but he just was able to find it. He knew how he swung. And as I've gotten older, I think that's pretty important to know that, can you stand up on a hole and have a fairly good idea that it's going to do this most of the time,
Oh, I remember a quick story, guys. I actually have to go fairly quickly, but
yeah, me too. I got a lot.
I remember playing with Bruce Simmons. I started working with Club Link in '98, doing their communications, and I finally got a game with Bruce Simmons, the president of Club Link, and he had this what we charitably call a fire and fallback swing.
Yeah,
those guys you see at the driving range and stuff. Well, he was one of those guys that Karl would say has an untrained swing but a trained mind, because Bruce just played this fade all day and shot a sweet 79, and I think I kind of creaked in with a 83 with back in the day trying to make this perfect golf swing.
Yeah, man. Well, I don't know. I thought we would be golfing by tomorrow. I had May 1st in my golf returns pool, and I don't think that's happening. Hopefully, it's back before you and I are. Thank you so much to Karl Morris. Go just Google him. There's just so much great Karl content. His podcast is called The Brain Booster.
You got it.
Of course, thank you to TaylorMade Golf, TaylorMadeGolf.ca, and JWApparelInc.com, O'ConnorGolf.ca, HumbleandFredRadio.com, and we will see you in 7 days.